Okay, I start this video with one question. Anybody knows how to automate distributing MST to prevent inputting a lot of commands in many switches? VTP version 3. VTP v3 allows each router and LAN device to transmit advertisements in frames on throwing ports, sending by multicast from VTP server to all neighboring devices by summary packets. When the switch receives a summary advertisement packet, it compares the VTP domain name. If the domain is different, the switch simply ignores the packet. But if the name is the same, the switch then compares the configuration revision, and if its own configuration revision is higher or equal, the packet is ignored. If it is lower, an advertisement request named client request is sent to the server, and server, after receiving client request, it sends subset for doing assimilation. Summary packets are sent every 5 minutes and also when something is changed in the server. In VTP v3, you can have just one primary server in a topology. In addition, only primary server is able to create and remove VLAN and MST instance in order to advertise and synchronize the information. You can either create VLAN in transparent, but transparent is not able to advertise the information to the other devices. VTP v3 has 4 modes, including mode server, which is backup for primary, mode client, which can advertise the information from the upper switch to the downstream switches, and transparent, which can create VLAN for itself and cannot advertise, and it can't receive configuration from any device. The last mode is off, which is VTP disabled, and also cut the VTP advertisements off to its downstream switches. In this video, we have a scenario to automate distributing MSTI and VLAN by VTP version 3. It is so useful. Don't miss this, my friend. Alright, let's go to the laboratory. Alright, here the laboratory. I wrote down the role just beside of each switch. For example, core switch is going to be our primary server. Switch 1 is a server as a backup for primary server. And switch 2 is our transparent mode. And the rest of the switches are going to be client mode, right? Now, what's the plan? Well, we configure VTP in each switch, and then we have to capture summary packets on the link that are connected to core switch, and then we have to configure VTP for MST after configuring MSTI in primary server. All right, let's get started with core switch in here. If I go to core switch, in which show VTP status, you can see the status of the VTP. As you can see, VTP version by default is 1. And as you can see, VTP domain name by default is null. And we have to configure that. And another thing is important that I have to show you is configuration revision. As I told you in the previous section, by default it is 0 because there is nothing changed in this scenario. By default it is 0. For configuring VTP, we have to go to global mode. And then, first of all, we have to input the keyword VTP with question mark. You can see the next commands. The important things is domain name. So we have to configure this one. And another thing we have to set is password. We can continue our project to advertise the information to other switches without password, but you better set your password in VTP because anybody is able to listen the port to figure out what is the configuration that is set on your VTP, right? So you should set your password in here. First of all, by the way, guys, version is so important. and we have to set this in this switch also. So first of all, we have to VTP domain and a suitable name for domain. Any name you can define, but you better define your name all lowercase. For example, I define CCNP. As you can see, it says changing VTP domain name from null to CCNP, right? And after that, I'm going to define our password. With VTP password, I input 123. And the password is set. And after all of them, I'm going to specify the version of the VTP, which is version 3. And if I coming back, which show VTP status, you can see the information are changed. First of all, as you can see, the version of the VTP is changed to 3, and the domain name was null and now is CCNP. And above all, I have to show you that this feature is added, feature MST. You can see that, guys, right? Another thing we have to consider it is in VLAN, feature VLAN, the operation mode is by default server, right? But in MST feature, the operation mode is transparent by default. And another thing we have to check is configuration revision. Is very important. Is still 0. And then we have to configure VTP in other switches. But first of all, I need to capture packets on this link, filter the packet, VTP. All right. Let's go to switch 1, which is supposed to be server. But before configuring VTP, I want to show you status, which show VTP status. As you can see, we haven't changed anything in switch 1, but the VTP domain name is changed to CCNP. Why? Because core switch already advertising the information to other switches. Interesting, right? But I have to tell you, the version of the VTP is 1 yet. So we have to configure it. And if I come to, for example, switch 3, which is the downstream switch, which show VTP status, you see that the domain name is changed to CCNP or any switch of the topology. Show VTP status. It is CCNP, and in switch 5, which show VTP status, all of the switches got the information from core switch. And let's do the rest of the configuration. VTP. So the domain name is set. So we need to specify the password, which is 123. And another thing which is very important is VTP version 3. And then going to server 3. Doing the same in here. VTP password 123 and the version of the VTP, which is 3. Alright, another thing we have to set is the role of the VTP in each switch. For example, this is server mode and the rest of the downstream switches are all client mode. And for example, we have to change this role to transparent mode. And also this one is a client, right? So we're going to the switch VTP mode server. You see that device mode already VTP server for VLANs, right? We have to go to other switches with VTP mode client. It is changed to client. Another VTP mode client, VTP mode client on transparent, VTP mode transparent, right? And the last switch with VTP mode with question mark, you can see all the roles, all the modes that are in version 3 VTP, right? Client, mode off, server, and transparent. So it's gonna be client. Great. All right, before continuing our project, let's check out the summary packets. This link that we already captured its packets from primary server. And these packets, if you remember, as I told you in the previous section, are being sent every 5 minutes, which means 300 seconds. And if I open the details, we can see all the information inside our summary packets that are being sent to other switches. As you can see, 802.1q. These packets are going through 802.1q ports. All of the information. Now here we go, the domain name. Because of this information, all of the switches set VTP domain name CCNP automatically. As you can see, all the information about VTP in this scenario. All right, let me close this. Okay, now it's time to create VLAN in the switch, in core switch. Going to global mode, 40 VLANs is okay. VLAN 1 to 40. Oh no, we are not allowed to create VLAN. Let me try out another switch. Oh god, please. VLAN 1 to 40. Oh, god damn it. Let me try out in client mode. VLAN 1 to 40. Oh no, we cannot create any VLAN. The project is done. Let's go home, guys. Okay, why is that? Why we cannot create in any VLAN in the switches? Well, as I told you in a theoretical section before this, we can only create VLAN in primary server, in VTP v3, right? So we have to specify this switch as a primary server and then creating our VLANs in this switch. So for this purpose, we have to go to privilege mode. In privilege mode with keyword VTP and then primary. With question mark, you can see there are several options in here: force, MST, and VLAN. We don't have to do with this one, force, but we have to do these options, MST and VLAN. Right now, we have to specify this server for primary for VLAN, right? So we type primary VLAN. But guys, by the way, if you don't input anything after primary, the system is going to set primary for VLAN by default. And now, after changing this server to primary server, going to global and creating our VLAN. VLAN 1 to 40. You see that? The VLANs are created successfully. Which show VLAN, you can see all the VLANs are created, right? And if I go, for example, in this switch, it has to receive the information, the VLANs, for a simulation. Do show spanning VLAN. You see that? All the information are advertised to all the switches, neighboring switches. And if I go to client mode with do show VLAN, you see that all the 40 VLANs are created. But guys, we cannot advertise our VLANs in transparent mode. In transparent mode, if I show VLAN, you can see there is no VLAN in here or advertised, right? But another thing I have to mention it, we are able to create VLAN in transparent mode. So if I, for example, create VLAN number 90, you see that we are able to create our VLAN in transparent. But as I told you in theoretical section, transparent mode is selfish and it doesn't advertise its information to other switches. But another thing you have to consider it is this switch, because the transparent is in the middle. So what happens to the client switch, which is the downstream of the transparent switch? So if I go to client switch, which show VLAN, you see all of the VLANs are created. So why is that? Well, the answer is easy, because this switch, as the name says, it is transparent, and the packets and advertisement packets go through this transparent glass to the destination in here. You got it? And now all of the switches except transparent switch receive the information and set all the VLANs. Okay, now let's go and check out the revision number in primary server after creating our VLANs, which show VTP status. Looking for revision number. Okay, configuration revision is changed to 2. It was 0 before any changes, right? And if I go to any switch in this scenario, for example, in the further switch client mode in switch 5, which show spanning tree, which show VTP status, you can see that the revision number is the same number, 2. As I told you in the theoretical section, that downstream switches, after receiving summary advertisements, they're going to compare the revision number, and if the revision number is lower, they're going to send client requests to the server, and the server going to send subset for assimilation, right? And that's why all of the switches have the same revision number in the scenario, except transparent. But guys, listen, you may want to add switch or switches to your topology, which was being in use in other branches or other projects, right? You never connect the switch to your topology before checking that. It is strongly recommended that you erase the switch that you want to add to your topology, because it may change your topology, which is very, very dangerous, guys. But if you don't want to erase the setting and you need that, you have to check the revision number in VTP, right? And check it out. And if you don't want to erase that switch completely, you can change the domain name and then set your main domain name into that switch to make sure that you reset the revision number to 0, which is very important. So always remember that when you want to add another switch to your topology. All right, another thing I have to show you is show VTP password. You can check your VTP password through this command, show VTP password, right? Alright, now it's time to configure VTP for MST. I start from primary server. The first thing we have to do is to change VTP mode, which is set transparent for MST feature by default. To do that, we have to go to configuration mode and say VTP mode server and question mark. You can see the MST feature in here. So we say it's gonna be VTP mode server for MST with question mark, nothing more, enter. And setting device to VTP server for MST feature, right? And another thing we have to check is specifying the primary. So core switch is a primary server for MST feature either. To do that, we're gonna go to privileged mode, and here with VTP primary question mark, you can see the MST. As I showed you before, with MST, you will change the primary server for feature MST. As you can see, it says this system is becoming primary server for feature what? MST. Great. And now if I show VTP status, you can see the information in here. And if I coming down, you can see the feature MST that VTP operation mode is primary server. That is nice. And I'm going to change the mode for MST feature in the rest of the switches quickly. Going to switch 1 with VTP mode server MST. It is set and client. Going to configuration mode, VTP mode client MST. It is set. Going to another switch. Alright, now all of the VTP mode in switches are set for feature MST. And the next thing we have to do is creating MST configuration. I'm going to go to switch 1, which is server, spanning tree, changing the spanning tree mode to MST with mode MST. And then we're going into MST configuration mode with spanning tree MST configuration. And after getting into MST configuration mode, we specify the name. Guys, I have already taught you MST concepts and configurations in the 2 previous videos completely, so please go and watch them. So I'm not going deep into MST right now. Name, for example, CCNA revision 1 instance, for example 1, and I map VLAN 1 to 20, and then for saving the changes we have to input exit. Look at here, after inputting exit to save the changes, it says MST region is not configurable as the system is not the primary server. So we cannot change anything in MST in other switches but primary. It is very great for security because nobody can change anything in other switches but in primary server. It's very good for security. So we're going to primary server, and here going to configuration and do the same. as we did in the previous video for configuring MST, mode MST with spanning tree MST configuration, and then name CCNA. Revision number would be, for example, 1, and I'm gonna create instance 1 and map VLAN 1 to 20 into instance 1, and creating another instance to VLAN 21 to 40, and after that with exit the changes are going to be saved because this is a primary server, right? After that we show spanning tree MST configuration. You can see that the VLANs 1 to 20 are mapped into instance 1, and the VLANs 21 to 40 are mapped into MSTI 2, right? And if I go to other switches, they're supposed to receive the information. For example, switch 1, if I show spanning tree MST configuration, here we go. All of the informations about MST are advertised to other switches. As you can see, the name is CCNA, revision number is 1, and all of the VLANs are mapped into the right instances. And if I, for example, go to switch 3, which show spanning tree MST configuration, as you can see, the VLANs are mapped into right instances. But the important thing that you have to consider is VTP v3 is not able to advertise the spanning tree mode. So it cannot change your spanning tree mode to MSTP. So as a result, you have to change the spanning tree mode manually in all of the switches. So you should always remember that while configuring VTP v3 to distribute MSTI in your job. Let me write down in here, config manually spanning tree mode MST, right? So you have to configure that manually. You can also deploy this configuration by automation tools like Ansible. I don't know, but obviously we don't have to do with automation tools in this tutorial. All right, I have to test VTP for MSTI for the final round in primary server. If I go to primary server, I'm gonna create another instance, MSTI. Let's go to MSTI configuration mode with spanning tree MST configuration with name. It was CCNA, if you remember. Revision was 1, and I'm gonna create instance number 3, and VLANs from 60 to 90 are mapped into instance 3. With exit, the changes are saved. If I go end and show MST configuration, spanning tree MST configuration, you can see VLANs from 60 to 90 are mapped into MSTI 3. If I go to any switch in this topology, for example, the further switch is client switch 5 in here, which shows spanning tree MST configuration, as you can see, MSTI 3 is advertised to all of the switches. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget about subscribing me. I'm trying to show my best in the videos for learning better and better and better. The concepts are all coming from my experience in real scenarios. So if you understand the concept, You can do all the scenarios in your job. Don't worry about that. See you soon.